Hello everyone, because of some technical issues. But yes, now we are here. So let's just wait for 1 minute for everyone to be here and then we can just start with the session. I'm just waiting for a few more people to start. So yes, hello everyone and welcome to the live session. So this live session is for you guys so that you can be connected with us with the latest updates in the migration. And also it's a platform where you can share your queries and we can answer your questions related to the migration updates. As you know that Australian immigration has been updating a lot a lot of updates for the states and 189 invites. So yes, so today's topic, I'm excited to talk about a very important topic, and that is the opportunities for skill migration in Australia, especially for the social workers. So today we'll be focusing on how you can pursue a permanent residency in Australia as a social worker. So let's begin. As you might know, that skill migration in Australia is occupation based. This means that you migrate based on your profession, as you need to select one specific occupation related to your qualification and experience. And you might often hear from people that you can study any PR related occupations such as nursing, community worker, teaching, and others. So, why do people say that? Because these occupations are considered in demand in Australia. And that's what I want to emphasize today, that social worker is a very viable option towards a permanent residency. So, over the past few years, one occupation that has consistently been in demand in Australia is social worker. But let's clarify. Social worker in Australia is quite distinct from other related roles, such as community worker, a disability support worker, or personal carer. Many people sometimes get confused that if they're working as a community worker or a disability support worker, can they be eligible as a social worker? So the answer is not, because I'll discuss the eligibility later on, but the social worker occupation is quite distinct from this. But before that, I have often come across with many clients during my consultation that what actually a social worker do, because they say to me that I would like to study Masters of Social Work to get a permanent residency. But what actually a social worker does, they are not aware of it. So I would like to explain in a simpler way that a social worker plays an important role in different settings such as aged care, health, community centers, and hospitals. They act as a facilitator between the clients and community services and provides resources for patients in the areas like health, housing, and employment. And they also conduct individual and family interviews to understand their needs. So, in short, like they often act as a mediator and they assist individuals and communities in dealing with various social and personal challenges. So, they provide support, counseling, and resources to improve their well being, and they enhance the overall quality of life. So, to become a social worker in Australia, you must have completed a university bachelor's degree or higher, which is a requirement here in Australia. So, in Australia, you can either pursue a bachelor's of social work or a master's of social work, both of which needs to be accredited by the skills assessment body, and it should be a recognized degree. So I have prepared a small PPT for you guys, just a small one, so don't worry, where I have explained the skills assessment requirement. So just a moment, I'll just share my screen. Yes. So as I told, the social worker occupation is a very viable option for permanent residency because it is under the medium and long-term list. So what do you mean by a medium and long-term list is that if any occupation falls under this list, which means that it is open to many available visa options. And also the occupation is in demand, so it is going to be stayed for a long-term basis. So as I told, that is under the medium and long-term list, which means that it is available for various visa options, such as 189, 190, 491, which everyone is familiar about the skilled visa. And also the other options such as employer sponsorship of 482, 186, 494. So as you can see, it's a wide range number of visa options available for social worker occupation. Now going next, like the outline of PR process, how it works, like first you need to get a skills assessment as a social worker, and then you need to lodge an expression of interest. And once your EOI is selected, then you lodge a visa application. Now the first step, that's the main, where you need to get a skill assessment. So what are the requirements to get a skill assessment as a social worker? So let's go for that. So first of all, the authority for skills assessment is AASW, that is Australian Association of Social Workers. So this is the only authority that assesses social worker occupation. And what are the pathways in this? Simple, two pathways. Students, those who have studied in Australia, and the second pathway is for the students, those who have studied outside of Australia. So for people, those who have studied in Australia, their course must be a AASW accredited course. So if your course is accredited to AASW, then you satisfy all the criteria of the skill assessment, because this accreditation is on that basis that the course has met all the requirements according to the skills assessment body. So if you are thinking of studying Bachelor's of Social Work or a Master's of Social Work in Australia, then you need to make sure that your course is accredited to ASW. Because if not, then you will not be eligible to apply for a social worker through this pathway. The second pathway is for the students who have studied outside of Australia. So those who have studied outside of Australia, for them, they have to meet the at least five, they have to meet five criteria for the ASW skill assessment. Now, what are the five criteria for those who have studied offshore qualification? So the first one is that your qualification must be a specific qualification. That is, it must be a bachelor's in social work or it must be a master's of social work. So it must be a specific one, whichever you choose. It should be bachelor's or higher. There is no diploma of social work. It cannot be eligible for the skill assessment. So the second criteria is that your qualification must be regarded as a professional social work qualification in the country of training. And the third one is that the learning outcomes, that is the units that you study overseas in your course, that must be comparable to a ASW accredited social work qualification. So how to check that? ASW has provided a guideline with the learning outcomes. So you can compare your units which you have studied to the ASW guidelines. And if it match, then you meet the criteria number 3. Now, the fourth and the most important one is that your course should have at least a 980 hours of placement training. So this is a workplace assessment. So what happens? Like there is 980, you have to complete 980 hours of placement. This is within your course curriculum. So if you need to make sure that if you have studied Bachelor's of Social Work overseas, your course curriculum includes this 980 hours of placement training. Because without this, you won't be eligible to meet the criteria number 4. Now, the last criteria, that is the ASW only accepts academic IELTS test. That is, you need to meet the English requirement. So a minimum and overall score of 7 in each is required for IELTS, that is academic, for the social work assessment. So earlier, they used to only allow a one sitting IELTS test where applicants had to appear. They had only one chance to appear for the IELTS test, but right now they have also opened up a 2 sitting IELTS test where you can try to score a minimum and overall of 7 bands. There are also exemptions in English requirement. That is, if you have studied a secondary or a tertiary education in English-speaking countries such as Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, UK, then you can get an exemption. But you need to make sure that this is secondary education plus tertiary. It's not just tertiary. Many people get confused that I have studied Bachelor's of Social Work or Master's from Australia, I should get an exemption, but no. If your secondary education must also be from these listed countries, and then you will get an exemption of English. So these are the 5 criteria. To sum up, first, it should be a specific qualification, that is a bachelor's or master's of social work. Second, it must be regarded as a professional social work qualification in your country. The third one is that the units that you study must be comparable to a ASW accredited social work qualification. The fourth one is to how you must have completed at least 980 hours of placement training. And the fifth and the last is that you need to meet the English language requirement, that is the IELTS academic test, where you have to score a minimum and overall of 7 bands. So these are the 5 criteria. If you meet this, if you have studied this course overseas and you meet these 5 criteria, you can go ahead to lodge the skill assessment. Now, the assessment fees for the international social work qualification, Australian social work qualification, you can see that there is a drastic difference between these two. You can see that for the international social work qualification, the charges is around 1890. That's $1,890. And if you see for those applicants who have completed their studies in Australia, the charges is $420. So there is a big difference between the amount for both of the occupations. And the other charges are for the renewal of skill assessment for those it has expired. So the expiry of the skill assessment is 3 years from the date you have received your assessment outcome. And also they provide the provisional 485 temporary graduate assessment service. So this is the assessment fees, which keeps on changing each financial year. So this is as per the 2023 financial year. Now the duration for skill assessment, like once you apply for the skill assessment, if your degree is Australian qualification, then it takes around 3 to 4 weeks for them to assess. And if it's an international qualification, they take quite a long time, that is 12 to 15 weeks. So you can plan ahead according to your requirements. Like if you have studied an international qualification, you need to see that it is a 12 to 15 weeks time, which they take to process. Now, once your skill assessment has been done, the next step is to lodge an expression of interest. So the expression of interest, like we'll be mainly focusing on the skill visas because we have a major number of people who are applying for the skill visas as a social worker. So for expression of interest, there are 3 subclasses which social worker is eligible for. That is 189, 190, and 491. So to sum up, 189 is a federal invite. Like to be eligible to apply for 189, you require 65 points. And 190 is the state sponsored. And to be eligible to lodge for 190 is 60 points because the 5 points is given by state. So that sums up to 65. And 491 is the regional sponsorship where you are eligible to lodge on 50 points for your own and 15 points is given from state. So that totals to 65. So social worker is eligible for these 3 subclasses. And as I have explained, like 189 is a skilled independent visa, 190 is the permanent visa, state nomination visa, and the 491 is the regional visa, where it is a conditional PR, you get the visa for 5 years, and then you have to live and work in a regional area for 3 years. So now coming back to the social work invitations, each state invitation, like last, I'll just stop sharing just a moment. Yes. So sorry, I'm just. Yes. So now, as we have discussed the requirements, that is first the skills assessment. Once you have completed your course from Australia, it's easy pathway for you. You clear your IELTS, you get your skill assessment through ASW, and then you lodge your expression of interest under 189, 190, or 491. Now, for overseas applicants, you need to meet the 5 criteria. And if you meet that criteria, you can go ahead and lodge your assessment. And for you, the same EOI that you can apply, that is 189, 190, or 49. Now, coming to the invitations, we'll just have a small recap on how the invitation works for the social worker. As last year, you could have seen last financial year, all the social workers who lodged their EOI at just 65 points got invitation. So in the last December round, they were invited at just 65 points. So if you think you're eligible, this is the best time that you apply, because don't forget 189 round is still there. Also, for 190 Victoria, we have seen applicants getting invited in Victoria for social worker. Even in Queensland, they have been invited at 80, 85 points. For Western Australia, social workers are invited at 90 points. So you, anyways, you require IELTS 7 bands, that is the proficient English. So I believe that you can easily reach 80, 85 points for EOI, in your EOI. And also, social worker as an occupation, you require a lot of talking. Your communication skills has to be very strong. So what we have seen from our clients, that the English requirements are either proficient or superior. So for them, scoring 80, 85 points is a good score. And we have seen that many states have been inviting social worker because it is the occupation which is in demand, especially after the pandemic. So yes, I believe that this occupation, this course is a viable option for you. And also you need to make sure that you meet the admission requirements for the social worker, because it is not easy to get an admission in this course, because you need to meet many prerequisites and the English requirement before enrolling in this course. So if you're thinking a social worker as your PR pathway, you need to also think like what employment opportunities you will be getting, because it's all time, efforts, and money that you will be spending out. So yes, I would like to, this was my presentation for the social work eligibility. Now I'll open the platform for you guys to ask questions, and we can have a question and answer round. So you guys can drop in your questions, and I'll just try to answer all your queries. Now we got a question from Nitesh. Hello, Sanya. Do you think Western Australia would receive additional seats, especially after the last round where they used up their allocations for the year? So, Nitesh, like as of now, we are not aware like they will be opening up additional seats, but yes, there is going to be a migration update around December, according to the announcement that the minister had made. So they might increase the seats, but according to the current allocations, they have used almost the maximum of their quotas. But we'll keep you updated if they increase their additional quotas for this financial year. Questions from Meeta. How is the job market for social worker? So Meeta, the job market for social worker, even if you consider the average salary that a social worker gets is around, it's 70,000. It ranges from 70,000 to 90,000. And also social worker are required, as I mentioned, in community centers, in health centers, in mental health, and schools, and even in hospitals. So there is a high demand of this occupation. It is under the priority list, and also people are getting invited at less points, which means that Australia needs social worker. So I believe that social worker is a very good occupation. And also if you are considering the job market, yes, you are at a good pathway. Question from Nitesh. I have 85 points for 189 and 90 points for 190, currently employed in my field in Western Australia. How good are my chances, as the last round had invites only up to 95 points for non-priority occupation? Nitesh, I would like to have more information, like which occupation you have applied for, what is the occupation, which skill assessment do you have, and then maybe I can answer your question. But I believe that 85, 90 points is pretty good. And if you're living in Western Australia and employed in your own field, you have good chances of invite. We have a question from Aussizz. What is the scope and growth as a social worker in terms of career? So Aussizz, as I mentioned, the scope and growth as a social worker in terms of career, as Australia, as this occupation is in demand in Australia. And as a social worker in terms of career, all I would say, like, they act as a mediator between patients and the community allies and so on. So in each organization, like community health center, in schools, in mental health, or even in hospitals, they require a social worker. So the demand of this occupation is quite high, and Australia requires social workers. So the career, in terms of career, in terms of salary, the average range is around from 70 to 90,000. So it's pretty good salary in Australia. So it's a good option to go forward with. Question from Mehul. Are they community based or not? And if yes, how to work or target them? Sorry, Mehul, can you be specific more? Like, what are you looking after? Are they community based or not? I didn't get your question. Question from Sitar: how can individuals interested in social work and PR pathways get started in building their careers in this field? So, Sitar, during your course, like during your Masters of Social Work or Bachelors of Social Work, you have to do a 980 hours of work placement. Sometimes during this placement, if they like you or if they see your performance, they review your performance, you can target your market through there. Like you work in the normal and you work in a work environment during your placement training, and sometimes you get a job through, they convert you into full time, sometimes through that the placement training, or also you can target many, there are many openings up in hospitals and community health centers and mental health centers and so on. So you can build your careers in this field, but anyways, after your qualification, you'll be qualified for the work as a social worker. So, question from Nitesh. Occupation is chemical engineer. So, Nitesh, I believe chemical engineer, yes, it's open in Western Australia. And also, you're sitting at 90 points. However, it's not under the priority list. That is why they have been considering more, giving more priority to the people in the construction sector. However, don't lose hopes. You are at 95 points, which is a good point. You might be invited. Are you also considering for 491 options? A question from Nihal also: can we get sponsorship in social worker? If so, are we eligible for 186? So yes, Nihal, social worker is eligible for 186 visa. So but to be eligible for 186, you require 3 years of full-time experience as a social worker. Along with that, you require a skills assessment as a social worker, plus an employer who's ready to sponsor you for 186. But yes, it is eligible for 186, and if you have 3 years of full-time experience and a skill assessment, you will be eligible for to get a sponsorship. I'll just answer a few of the questions from Instagram. Question from Twinkle. Hello, I had a positive skills assessment in agriculture assistant and currently live in ACT. I just want to know that if I will move to Queen Bane NSW, how are the chances for 491 and 190 at NSW? So Twinkle, as NSW has released their target sectors, which includes agriculture as one of the target sectors. So if you move to Queen Bane, you can target ACT and NSW both. So it's a good move to NSW because agriculture assistant is in the target sector, and NSW didn't had like they haven't opened their 491 yet. So once you move, you can only apply after 3 months. You need to make sure that once you move, you can only apply for 3 months after for 491 and 6 months for 190. Question from Twinkle again. Agriculture is in priority list in NSW, so is more chances to get 491. Yes, Twinkle, agriculture consultant, like as agriculture is under the priority list, it's a good chances that you get invited. However, first you need to meet the state requirements as well. Like for 190, 6 months, and for 491, you have to live for 3 months. All good. We got a question from Sitar. What is the education qualification required to become a social worker? So Sitar, like the admission requirement for social worker is that first you need to meet the prerequisites if you would like to get an admission. That is, for example, if someone have to study medicine or nursing, they have to have a background of science. So same thing like that. If you want to if you want to get an admission as a social worker, you need to meet some skill prerequisite like some studies that you have done in your undergrad, and also you need to meet the English requirement. If you meet that, then you can be eligible to get an admission. Question from Shanav: is social worker in NSW target sector? Shanav, no, and social worker is not in the target sector. The target sectors for NSW is IT, health, education, and agriculture and infrastructure. But don't forget, there is still 189. This is the 190 list. 189 is still there to be invited, where earlier social workers were invited at 65 points. Question from Rakesh: can you share some best practices as a career as social worker? So Rakesh, social worker, it depends like in on which sector you're working as a social worker, as because you can work in hospital as a mediator between the patients and the allied doctors. You can work in the mental health. You can work in school with the children, and you can act as a facilitator between the families and the patients. You help them for the social well-being. But yes, social worker, what I have seen from my clients as well, that they are at a good position. They have a good practice for their career, and they like their practices for career aspects have been going good for that. Question from Smith. Do you think that social work can come into priority sector soon in NSW? So, Smith, we are not aware like if NSW is going to change their target sector, but yes, social worker is in demand in all over Australia. It might come under the target sector because you'd never know. NSW has always been unpredictable. They can change their requirements, it's not certain. But yes, currently it's not there, but you still have 189 for that chances. Question from Rakesh, how can I apply for these courses in some other state? So Rakesh, first we need to check whether what you have studied in your undergrad, and if you meet the prerequisites, then yes, you can apply for this course in the states where it is available. So you can contact us for admission and we can help you to guide whether you're eligible for that. Guys, you can drop in your questions. I can answer it. Also, we all are waiting for the 189 round, and let's see what when the 189 rounds will be started, because there has been no update from the department. However, with the new updates yesterday, Northern Territory has opened their applications for 491, but 190 has been closed as of now, but they have opened for 491. We are waiting for NSW to open 491, but right now it's 190. So if you have your EOIs ready, please lodge it. You never know, you might get invited, even if it's not in the target sector. If you meet the 65 points eligibility, just lodge your EOI and you can wait for the invite. But try to increase your points as high as possible because they will be considering the high ranking EOIs for the non-target sectors. We got a question from Ravi that how is the social work chances in state for Victoria? So Ravi, we have seen social workers getting invited in state of Victoria. And as you know, for Victoria, for 190, you're not required to be working in your nominated occupation. Like you can lodge your registration of interest straight away if you live in Victoria and you're not required to be working as a social worker. However, you will be given priority if you're working in your nominated or NSS core skill level 1 to 3, and also the priority depends on the salary, English, and so on. Also, we have seen one of the invitations for social worker from Queensland yesterday, from the yesterday's round. So, and also from Western Australia, this occupation was invited at 90 points, even for an overseas applicant. Question from Ramesh. I have questions regarding early child skill assessment. I have completed bachelor's in IT 2 years and got credit from advanced diploma. I have questions regarding I have completed bachelor's in IT 2 years and got credit from what are the chances? So Ramesh, like, is this question for early childhood skill assessment? All good. Are you talking about the English exemption? So Ramesh, as far as you have completed your bachelor's, that's 3 years, and early child 1 year, that counts to 4 years. You will be eligible for an exemption from for English. All good, guys. Do you have any more questions? You can let me know, or even after the session, you can drop us an email and we shall be able to assist you with that. So all good, guys. So it was a very interactive session. Thank you for the questions. You can email me or email our marketing team if you require our assistant. You can contact us, our branches in Sydney, Parramatta, Macquarie Park, and Bankstown, and we will be able to assist you with your skill assessment, EOI, and PR pathways and other visa options. Thank you for attending the live session today, and we shall be in touch. Thank you.